Shalom Havarim, James Trim here. As I am recording this today, Yom Kippur is approaching. We're in the days of awe. You may be listening to this at a later point in time, and that's fine. It'll still be very enlightening. But I want to talk to you today about the true meaning of Yom Kippur and the book of Hebrews and, believe it or not, the book of Enoch, and how all of this material, including material from the Zohar, unlocks the meaning of the book of Hebrews and what Paul is actually trying to say. But before we get going, I want to ask everybody to please donate to support this work. As I'm making this video today, we are $500 in the negative pending in our account for tonight, which means we've got to make a deposit of at least $500 by the end of the day today to keep from having a chain reaction of returned items and fees. I know, things have been very rough with inflation. Donations over the last few months have been down while expenses have been up, and we're really just treading water on trying to basically survive. So for those that don't know, my wife is chronically ill. She suffers chronic pain. She's disabled. I'm her at-home caretaker. In addition to the ministry of putting all these materials together for you and doing work on Hebrew and Aramaic origins of the New Testament and the Jewish roots of the original Jewish followers of Yeshua as the Jewish Messiah. And all of this material, or at least the vast majority of it, I put online free, supported by donors like you. So if you can possibly donate today, donations can be sent by PayPal to donations@wnae.org, and or you can click on the donate link in the video description. From there, you can donate by PayPal, Zelle, or GoFundMe. All right. I also want to remind everybody to like our video, subscribe to our channel, click that notification bell so you'll get notified when new videos come out. Let us know what you think in the comments. Participate in the discussions in the comments section, and share these videos with your friends through email, social media, private messages, and so on. So let's start with Hebrews chapter 2, verses 5 through 18. And I want to today share with you some insights into these passages that unlock much of the meaning of the book of Hebrews that you may have missed before. In fact, you probably have if you don't have this background information that I'm going to share today. So starting in Hebrews chapter 2, verse 5, and reading through verse 18 to get proper context here. Verse 5, for unto the angels has he not put in subjection the world to come, whereof we speak. And then these next two verses are very important. Verse 6, but one in a certain place testified, saying, what is a man that you are mindful of him, or the son of man that you visit him? You made him a little lower than the angels. You crowned him with glory and honor, and did set him over the works of your hands. Verses 6 and 7, starting with the words, what is man, are quoting Psalms 8, 5 through 7, or Psalms 8, 4 through 6, depending on whether you're looking at a Christian or Jewish edition. Okay, verse 8 in Hebrews 2, following up on this, you have put all things in subjection under his feet. For in that he put all in subjection under him, he left nothing that is not put under him, but now we see not yet all things put under him. But we see Yeshua, who was made a little lower than the angels, for the suffering of death, crowned with glory and honor, and he, by the grace of Elohim, should taste death for every man. For it became him for whom all things, and by whom all things, in bringing many sons unto glory, to make the captain of their salvation perfect through sufferings. Now at verse 11, for both he that sanctifies and they who are sanctified are all of one, for which cause he is not ashamed to call them brothers, saying, I will declare your name unto my brothers. In the midst of the assembly will I sing praise unto you. And again I will put my trust in him. And again, behold, I and the children which Elohim has given me. For as much then as the children are partakers of flesh and blood, he also himself likewise took part of the same, that through death he might destroy him that has power over death, that is the devil. That's verse 14. I want you to remember that verse. I'm going to repeat it. For as much then as the children are partakers of the flesh, he also likewise himself took part of the same, that through death he might destroy him that had power over death, that is the devil. Verse 15. Deliver them who through fear of death were all their lifetime subject to bondage. For truly he took not on him the nature of angels, but he took on him the seed of Abraham. Wherefore in all things it behooved him to be made like unto his brothers, that he might be a merciful and faithful high priest in things pertaining to Elohim, to make reconciliation for the sins of Elohim. For in that he himself has suffered being tempted, he is able to save them who are tempted. Okay, so why does Hebrews let's see, what verse was it here? Verse 14, I think. No. Verse 6. So verses 6 through 7 are quoting Psalms 8, 5 through 7. Why does it say, but one in a certain place testified, saying? That's a really odd terminology. We don't see that terminology elsewhere. Either, usually it describes the saying to someone or the scriptures, but why does it say one in a certain place testified? Who is the speaker in that phrase? To understand, and it's very significant who the speaker is, but to understand the answer to the real meaning of that verse, we have to understand Psalm 8 and how the sages connect Psalm 8 with the same material that we see in the book of Enoch. Okay? So Psalm 8, verses 5 through 7 in Jewish editions, verses 4 through 6 in Christian editions. Psalm 8 reads, What is man that you are mindful of him, and the son of man that you think of him? Yet you have made him a little lower than the Elohim, and you have crowned him with glory and honor. You have made him to have dominion over the works of your hands. You have put all things under his feet. Now, one thing that we should note here is that where the Hebrew of the Masoretic text has the phrase a little lower than Elohim, little lower than God, in verse 6, both the Aramaic Peshitta and the Greek versions of this passage in Psalms have little lower than angels. And it's interpreted to refer or to mean angels in Hebrews 2, 6 through 9. Now, according to the Talmud, the Midrash Rabbah, and the Zohar, this phrase in Psalms 8:5, what is man that you are mindful of him, was actually spoken by a group of angels who were challenging Elohim. So let's look at the Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud, Sanhedrin, page 38b. Here we read, Rav Judah said in Rav's name, When the Holy One, blessed be he, wished to create man, he first created a company of ministering angels and said to them, is it your desire that we make a man in our image? They answered, Sovereign of the universe, what will be his deeds? Such and such will be his deeds, he replied. Whereupon they exclaimed, Sovereign of the universe, what is man that you are mindful of him, and the Son of Man that you think of him? Psalm 8:5. Whereupon he stretched out his little finger among them and counseled them with fire. The same thing happened with a second company. The third company said to him, Sovereign of the universe, what did it avail the former angels that they spoke of you as they did? The whole world is yours, and whatsoever you wish to do therein, do it. When he came to the men of the age of the flood and of the division of tongues, those deeds were corrupt. They said to him, Lord of the universe, did not the first company of angels speak correctly? Even to old age I am the same, and even to hoar hairs will I carry. Isaiah 46:4, he retorted. Okay, Lamentations Rabbah in the prologue 25 says, why is it stated, quote, for your pride, close quote? It alludes to the idols on which they pride themselves, saying, where are their gods, the rock in whom they trusted? Deuteronomy 32:37. Another interpretation of for your pride, on account of the ministering angels who are proud of themselves and say, what is man that you are mindful of him? Psalms 8:5. Ecclesiastes Rabbah 7:33 reads, what then was Adam's wisdom? You find that when the Holy One, blessed be he, wished to create Adam, he took counsel with the ministering angels and said to them, let us make man. Genesis 1:26. They spoke before him, Lord of the universe, what is man that you are mindful of him? Psalm 8:5. He replied to them, the man whom I desired to create will have wisdom exceeding yours. So that's what the Talmud and the Midrash Rabbah say. But let's take it even deeper into a sod level. Let's see what the Zohar says. The Zohar addresses this on 3 occasions in much more detail. The first is Zohar Volume 1, page 25b. We read, of the Nephilim it is said, and the sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair. Genesis 6:1. These form a second category of Nephilim already mentioned above. In this way, when God thought of making man, he said, let us make man in our image. He intended to make him head over the celestial beings who were to be his deputies, like Joseph over the governors of Egypt in Genesis 41:41. The angels thereupon began to malign him and say, what is man that you should remember him? Psalm 8:5. Seeing that he will assuredly sin before you. Said Elohim to them, if you were on earth like him, you would sin worse. And so it was, for when the sons of God saw the daughters of men, and they fell in love with them, and God cast them down from heaven. These were Uzzah and Azazel. From them the mixed multitude derived their souls, and thereof they also are called Nephilim, because they fell into fornication with fair women. Next, in Zohar Volume 1, page 23a, we read, Uzzah and Azazel actually opposed it, the creation of man. For when the Shekinah said to Elohim, let us make man, they said, what is man that you should know him? And they desire you to create man who, as you know, will sin before you. And why desire you to create man who, as you know, will sin before you through his wife, who is the darkness to his light, light being male and darkness female? The Shekinah answered them, "You yourselves shall commit the very crime of which you accuse him. And so it is written, the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were comely." Genesis 6. "And they went astray after them, and were degraded by the Shekinah from their holy estate. Said the colleagues, 'Rabbi, after all, Uzzah and Azazel were not wrong, because man really was destined to sin through woman.' He replied, 'What the Shekinah said was this: you have spoken worse of man than all the rest of the heavenly host. If you were more virtuous than man, you would have a right to accuse him. But whereas he will sin with one woman, you will sin with many women. As it is written, the sons of God saw the daughters of man." In Genesis 6. "Not a daughter, but daughters. And further, if man sinned, he was ready to repent and return to his master and repair his wrong." And finally, again from the Zohar, Volume 3, page 207b through 208a, we read, "They therefore went to Rabbi Shimon and laid the matter before him. In reply, he cited to them the verse, 'What is man that you are mindful of him, and the Son of Man that you visit him?' Psalm 8:5. The exposition of this verse, he said, is that it was utterly by those in charge of the world at the time when God expressed his intention of creating man. He called together various companies of heavenly angels and stationed them there before him. He said to them, 'I desire to create man.' They exclaimed, 'Man abides not in honor.' Psalm 44:13. God thereupon put forth his finger and burnt them. He then set other groups before him and said, 'I desire to create man.' They exclaimed, 'What is man that you should remember him? What is the character of this man?' They asked. He replied, 'Man will be in our image, and his wisdom will be superior to yours.' When he had created man, he sinned and obtained a pardon. Uzzah and Azazel approached him and said, 'We can plead justification against you, since the man whom you made has sinned against you.' He said to them, 'Had you been with them, you would have sinned equally,' and he cast them down from their high estate in heaven." So in Genesis 6, 1 through 2, we read, "And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and the daughters were born unto them, they were fair." In rabbinic literature, Shemechazah and Azazel in the book of Enoch are called Uzzah and Azazel. According to tradition found in the Zohar, when Yahweh was creating man, he intended him, man, to be head over all celestial beings. Certain angels, being led by Uzzah and Azazel, or as they're called in the book of Enoch, Shemechazah and Azazel, maligned Yahweh, saying, "What is man that you should remember him?" Quote, which we see as Psalm 8:5, saying that man would sin through his wife. Yahweh responded to them by saying that if they were on earth like man, they would sin worse than man, sinning with many women, not just one woman. Yahweh then cast them down to the earth. This point, we should point out that according to the book of Enoch, Gadriel and Azazel went as the serpent. 1 Enoch 69 verses 6 through 7 says, "And the third was named Gadriel. He it is who showed the children of men all the blows of death, and led astray Eve, and showed the weapons of death to the sons of men, the shield and the coat of mail, and the sword for battle, and all the weapons of death, and to the children of men. And from his hand they have proceeded against those who dwell in the earth from that day and forever." From this we can tell that Gadriel is one of the same with Azazel in the book of Enoch. We read in 1 Enoch chapter 8 verses 1 through 2. And Azazel taught men to make swords of iron, knives and shields and breastplates of brass, and made known to them the metals that are excavated from the earth, and the art of working gold, and concerning silver, and bracelets, and ornaments, and concerning antimony, and eyeshadow, and all kinds of costly stones, and all coloring tinctures. And there arose much godlessness, and being wicked, they were led astray, and became corrupt in all their ways. So it's very clear here that Azazel is the same as Gadriel, different name for the same entity. And that is the same as the one that misled Eve as the serpent. Okay. So, basically here, Enoch tells us that Azazel, one and the same with the serpent in the Garden of Eden, entered the garden and tempted Eve so as to prove his point that man should not be head over all celestial beings because he would sin through his wife. In other words, he actually goes down there and manipulates the situation to prove his point, to fulfill his prophecy, if you will. God then responds by casting the rebel angels to the earth to be tested themselves. And we read in the Torah, in Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 through 7, and it came to pass when man began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of Elohim saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives, whomever they chose. And Yahweh said, My spirit shall not abide in man forever, for that he also is flesh. Therefore shall his days be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of Elohim came in unto the daughters of men, and they bore children of them. The same were the mighty men that were of old, the men of renown. And Yahweh saw the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And it repented Yahweh that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him in his heart. And Yahweh said, I will blot out man, whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast and creeping thing and fowl of the air, for it repents me that I have made him. Who were the sons of Elohim? The book of Enoch tells us that the sons of Elohim were angels who left their first estate, and especially those who walk according to the flesh in the lust of uncleanness and despise authority. They were presumptuous, self-willed, they are not afraid, and speak evil of dignitaries. Referencing 2 Peter or 2 Kepha chapter 2 verse 2. And Jude 1, 6 through 8. And the angels who did not keep their first estate, but left their own habitation, he is reserved in everlasting chains under darkness for the judgment of the great day, as Sodom and Gomorrah, the cities around them, in a similar manner to those, having given themselves over to sexual immorality and gone after strange flesh, are set forth as an example of suffering and vengeance in eternal fire. Likewise also, these dreamers defile the flesh, reject authority, and speak evil of rulers. Again, as we read in the book of Enoch, 1 Enoch chapter 6, verses 1 through 6, which runs parallel to Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 through 7 that we covered. And it came to pass when the children of men had multiplied in those days, were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters. And the angels, children of heaven, saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, Come, let us choose us wives from among the children of men, and beget us children. And Shemihazah, who was their leader, said unto them, I fear you will not indeed agree to do this deed, and I alone shall have to pay the penalty of a great sin. And they all answered him and said, Let us swear an oath, and all bind ourselves by imprecations, not to abandon this plan, but to do this thing. Then they all swore together and bound themselves by imprecations upon it. And they were in all 200 who descended in the days of Jared onto the summit of Mount Hermon. And they called it Mount Hermon because they had sworn and bound themselves by imprecations upon it. Then in chapter 54, verse 6 of the book of Enoch, we read that these fallen angels became subjects to Satan. It says, And Michael and Gavriel and Raphael and Penuel shall take hold of them on that great day and cast them on that day into the burning furnace, that Yahweh Zevaot may take vengeance on them for their unrighteousness in becoming subject to Satan and leading astray those who dwell on the earth. So Azazel and his followers objected to Elohim's love for man, complaining that man would sin with woman. Azazel then took the form of the serpent, tempted Eve, thus setting Adam up to sin through her. Yahweh responded by casting HaSatan and his followers to earth to demonstrate that given flesh and blood, they would sin with women as well. Elohim does this, okay? Hebrews tells us that the Messiah defeated HaSatan, i.e. Azazel, and redeemed mankind by himself taking on flesh and blood himself, and himself overcoming the very temptations of the flesh that Azazel and the fallen angels' followers had failed to overcome. This is why in Hebrews chapter 2, verses 6 through 7, it quotes Psalm 8, 5 through 7, when it uses the unusual language, but one in a certain place testified saying. Because who was the one? The one that testified saying, even though it's quoting Psalms, it's quoting the word of Elohim. The word of Elohim is there quoting HaSatan, the fallen angels. Okay? So it quotes the fallen angels in this passage, saying, What is man that you are mindful of him, or the Son of Man that you visit him? You made him a little lower than the angels. You crowned him with glory and honor. You set him over the works of your hands. And then when we get down to verse 14, for as much as the children are partakers of flesh and blood, he also, the Messiah, likewise took part of the same, i.e. flesh and blood, that through death he might destroy him that had power over death, that is the devil. So Hebrews is quoting this passage from the Psalm that is this challenge that HaSatan made, then answers the challenge, or points out that Messiah answered the challenge by himself taking on the very flesh and blood that Adam failed, that HaSatan failed, and the fallen angels failed, but he defeats them by taking it on and succeeding, and that's how he destroys the HaSatan and the fallen angels, how he defeats them with the weakest thing in the universe, flesh and blood. This is why the book of Hebrews continues in Hebrews chapters 8 through 10, the whole book of Hebrews in general, talking about Yom Kippur, with Yom Kippur imagery. So in the Yom Kippur ceremony, the high priest casts lots over two goats, one which is anointed for Yahweh and the other for Azazel. And we read in the Torah, in Leviticus 16, 7 through 10, And he shall take the two goats and set them before Yahweh at the door of the tent of meeting. And Aharon shall cast lots over the two goats, one lot for Yahweh and the other lot for Azazel. You may We've read all about Azazel now in the book of Enoch, the Zohar, the Midrash Rabbah, the Talmud. Okay. And Aharon shall present the goat upon which the lot fell for Yahweh and offer him for a sin offering, and the goat for which the lot fell for Azazel shall be set alive before Yahweh to make atonement over him, to set him away for Azazel into the wilderness. By the way, there's a big parallel to this in the book of Enoch, with Azazel being driven by the fallen angels out into the wilderness, cast into a pit and a big stone thrown over it. Okay. The first of these goats represents the first coming of the Messiah as a sin offering, represented by the death of the Messiah. Then the high priest represents the resurrected Messiah. He enters into the Holy of Holies, which represents the heavenly Holy of Holies. He sprinkles blood 7 times on the altar, representing the opening of the 7 seals in the book of Revelation, by the way. Then the high priest returns from the Holy of Holies, representing the return of the Messiah. And then we read in Leviticus 16, 21 through 22, and Aharon shall lay both his hands upon the head of the live goat, and confess upon him all the iniquities of the children of Israel, and all their transgressions, even all their sins, and he shall put them upon the head of the goat, and shall send him away by the hand of an appointed man into the wilderness. And the goat shall bear upon him all the iniquities unto a land which is cut off, and he shall let go the goat into the wilderness. This has its parallel in 1 Enoch chapter 10 verses 4 through 8. And again Yahweh said to Raphael, bind Azazel hand and foot, cast him into the wilderness, and make an opening in the desert which is in Dudael, and cast him therein, and place upon him rough and high jagged rocks, and cover him with darkness, and let him abide there forever, and cover his face, that he may not see light. And on the day of the great judgment he shall be cast into the fire. And heal the earth which the angels have corrupted, and proclaim the healing of the earth, that they may heal the plague, and that all the children of men may not perish through all the secret things that the watchers have disclosed and have taught their sons. And the whole earth has been corrupted through the works that were taught by Azazel. To him ascribe all sins. So now hopefully you understand the deep meaning of Hebrews chapter 2 verses 5 through 18 as a preface to the whole of the book of Hebrews and the whole Yom Kippur theme of the book of Hebrews, and how it is about and well summed in verse 14 of chapter 2. For then as the children are partakers of flesh and blood, he also likewise took part of the same, that through death he might destroy him that had power over death, that is, the devil. He destroys HaSatan by taking on the very thing that HaSatan failed. That was the failure of HaSatan. He took on the flesh and defeated it. Defeated the temptations of the flesh that overcame Adam, that overcame HaSatan, but which Elohim, which the Messiah himself was able to overcome by when the Word became flesh, as we see in Yochanan 1:14. All right, that's it for today. I hope that you gained some insight from a Jewish Hebraic perspective into Hebrews chapter 2 verses 5 through 18 and the whole of the book of Hebrews, and have a better understanding of the true significance of Yom Kippur. Again, I'm going to ask everybody to please, if you can, I know there are those of you that can't, but if you can, please donate to support this work. We are just treading water financially right now, day by day, and today we are $500 in the negative that we need to cover in the bank tonight to be able to keep our bank account from going into the negative and starting a chain reaction of returned items and fees. I know how many of you have ever had that happen to you, but it's bad, real bad. We need to avoid that. So if you possibly can, we need your help today. You can donate by sending donations by PayPal to donations@wnae.org, or by clicking on the donate link in the video description, where you can donate by PayPal, Zelle, or GoFundMe. All right. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell so you get notified when new videos come out. Let us know what you think in the comments. Participate in the discussions in the comments. Share these videos with your friends through email, private messages, on social media. Share them on Facebook. Share them in relevant Facebook groups. Print it out and tape it to stray dogs. Get the message out. Okay? Until next time, everybody. Shalom.